In this video we're gonna set the jump. Whenever we press the space key, we're gonna jump. Okay, so without furthering delay, let's dive into this topic. Okay, so we need to head over to the script. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna do it update function, because update function get call every single frame and we need to check every single frame. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna check if, okay, if and you have to make this curly bracket and first bracket into this if condition. Okay, this is a if condition. You have to put a condition which should be true, like 1 is greater than 0, which is true, we know. So whatever you write in between these curly brackets will execute, okay, if it's the condition is true. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna check. Okay, we're gonna check input. Okay, we're gonna do input dot get key. Okay, we're gonna check input dot key get key. We're gonna pass into bracket, we have to pass the key code. So we're gonna check if we are pressing the space key. Okay, if we are pressing the space key, what we're gonna do, we're gonna print out, we're gonna firstly debug. Okay, firstly debug, we're gonna add a force in the y-axis. Okay, we're gonna jump. Okay, whenever we press the space key, we're gonna jump. But firstly we're gonna debug if it's working or not. So what we need to do, we have to type debug. Okay, debug, then dot log, we have to use this function, and you have to pass a string, okay, into these brackets. So we in quotation we will say like something like player jump. Okay, player jump. Okay, and then you have to end up with semicolon and control s on your keyboard to save this. So what we are doing, we are checking if we are pressing the space key or not. If we pressing the space key, so this debug.log, okay, this message will print out on the console. This message will print out on the console, and control s to save this, go over to console. If you can find the console, you just have to go to window. Okay, in the top window, then general, then you will able to find the console, or control shift plus c. Okay, it will bring up the console tab. So go to console tab. Okay, select the console tab and hit play. Okay, hit play. If we press the space key, okay, we will able to see that message will print out in the console, because we are checking. Okay, if we are pressing the space key, then the player jump message will print out. As you can see in the console, whenever I press, it get multiple times, get called multiple times, as you can see. So what we gonna do, instead of printing out message, we're gonna firstly we're gonna make a function. Okay, basically we have to type, to make a function, firstly you have to type void. Okay, void, and you have to name the function. Let's suppose we're gonna call it jump, and you have to make first bracket and then these curly brackets. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna put this message. Okay, control x for cut, we're gonna put it over here. Okay, we're gonna put it over here. So whenever we press the space key, we will call this function. Okay, we will call this jump function, and jump function will print out in the console player jump message. Okay, player jump message. So whenever we press the space key, okay, space key, we are checking every single frame. That's why we are doing it update function. We need to check every single frame. Okay, the update function get called 60 time in 1 second. You can imagine it's called over again and again. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna check if input, if we are pressing the space key or not. If we are pressing the space key, then we're gonna call this function, jump function, and jump function will print out a message on the console. As you can see, debug.log player jump, and we will able to see player jump message in the console. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna call the function. You have to name the first, and you have to make first bracket and then end up with semicolon. Okay, control s to save this script and head over to unity. You will able to see the same thing, but what we did, we just separated to make things simple. Okay, that's why we did in a function. Okay, function basically a set of line of code which does a specific things. Okay, so if we hit play, we will able to see that message. Okay, whenever we press the space key, or whenever we press the space key, we are calling the jump function. Okay, and jump function will print out the message debug.log player jump. So if we press the space key, as you can see, player jump calling multiple times. Okay, just popping out multiple times player jump message. So what we're gonna do, instead of printing out message, we're gonna add a force in the y axis. Okay, so we're gonna jump. As you can see in the inspector, we're not gonna add a force in the x axis. We just only want to add a force in the y direction. Okay, in the y direction. So what we need to do, we need to get the rigid body. If you haven't added the rigid body to the player character, what you need to do, you just have to add component, hit add component, find the rigid body. Okay, rigid body 2D, and select that. Okay, and also you have to find the box collider. Okay, you have to attach the box collider 2D as well. Find box by typing. Okay, then resize the collider as the sprite sheet, sorry, as the sprite. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we need this rigid body component, okay, of this game object. Okay, rigid body is responsible for velocity, adding force, and gravity scale. Okay, or the gravity, adding gravity. So what we need this rigid body. So what we need to do, we need to head over to again the script. Okay, we will create empty field of rigid body. So we have to make it public. Okay, so we can see in the inspector. So the type of that variable will be rigid body 2D. Okay, rigid body 2D, and you have to name. So I'm going to call RB for short form of rigid body, and then control S. Okay, control S, and head over to again Unity. You will able to see a rigid body field will appear. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna drag this rigid body to that field. So we will have link of that rigid body. Okay, so then we can tweak some value around. We can add a force in the y axis. Okay, so as you can see, it will look like this. It will say RB. As you can see, we name it RB, and it will say non rigid body 2D. Okay, what we need to do, we need to drag the rigid body into that slot. Now we have a link. Now we can add a force, or we can tweak some value that rigid body, which is this character. So what we gonna do, whenever we pressing the space key, okay, we are calling this jump function, and jump function printing out the message. Instead of printing out message, we will add, okay, we will add a force to the y direction. If I select the move tool and the player, we will add a force in the y axis. We're not gonna add in the x axis, but we only gonna add in the y axis. So what we need to do, we need to go over to, we can leave it the message. Okay, so what we're gonna do, RB, we are going to rigid body, and we are going to dot add force. Okay, was add force, and this will take a direction. Okay, a vector it will take. So we have to type this. Okay, new vector 2. Okay, new vector 2. Vector 2 has two axes. It has x and y. Okay, it has x and y. We're not gonna move in the x. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna put it 0f, but in the y we're gonna move some units, let's suppose 5f. But instead of hard coding this, what we're gonna do, we're gonna make a float variable. Okay, and we will set it public, so we can adjust in the inspector. What we're gonna do, we're gonna call it public. The type of that variable will be float. Okay, and we have to name it. We can say jump, something like that, jump height. By default you can set it to any value like 5 unit, 10 unit. Let's suppose we can set 5 unit or 5f. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna replace this 5f by jump height. Okay, jump height. And we also have so as we know, we set jump height by default 5 units, so it will move up by 5 unit in the y axis. And second parameter you have to pass, okay, force mode 2d dot impulse, because this is a force, so that's why we need to include force mode 2d dot impulse. Okay, and then end up with semicolon. Okay, and control s. So firstly what we are doing, we are checking if we pressing the space key or not. If we pressing the space key, okay, we are calling this jump function. And jump function firstly printing out the message on the console, as you can see player jump, and this and what it's doing, and going to rigid body and adding a force, okay, in the y axis. In the 0 it's adding 0, okay. In the y axis it adding jump height. By default we set the jump height 5 unit, as you can see, so it will move up in the y axis by 5 unit. And second parameter we have to pass force mode 2d dot impulse, because it is a force. And control as on your keyboard and head over to unity. You will able to see whenever we press the space key, that function will call, and the function will firstly print out the message player jump, and then it will go to rigid body, and it will add a force in the y axis, okay. So just wait for as you can see we can able to adjust a value like 10, so that's why we made the jump height to public, okay. We can adjust the value over here instead of hard coding, so we're gonna leave it as 5, okay. We're gonna leave it as 5. So if we hit play, and if we press the space key, we will able to see, okay, we will able to see the message first in the console, and then we're gonna jump by 5 unit in the y axis. Firstly I'm gonna clear it, okay. As you can see, firstly it's printing out the message, and as you can see we can jump. But the problem is we can jump as much as we can, but as much as we can. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna only jump when the character is grounded, okay. Whenever is grounded or land on ground, then we will jump. So we need to keep track of we if we are grounded or not. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna assign this square or this ground as a ground tag, okay. So that tag, okay. So what we need to do, we need to select that game object, okay. Select that game object and go to inspector. Over there you will able to see untagged, okay. So what you need to do, just select that and add tag, okay. And then hit the plus icon, hit the plus icon, okay. Hit the plus icon, hit the plus icon, and you have to name it ground, okay. Ground, and then save it, okay. Save it and head over to again that game object, okay. Game object, and then assign that tag to ground tag, okay. Ground tag, assign the tag as a ground tag. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to player script once more, okay. Player script once more. We have inbuilt function which checks whenever we collide with something, that is called on collision inter 2d function, okay. On collision inter 2d function, void on collision inter 2d function. This function get called whenever we collide with something, okay. Whenever we collide with something, this function get trigger, okay. So what we gonna do, we're gonna print out what we colliding with. Debug.log, we are going to other, okay. Other, then collider, then dot name, okay. So what we are doing, this function over here on collision inter 2d function get called whenever we collide with something, okay. So what we are doing, we are printing out. Firstly we are going to other, okay. Other, basically we are taking the argument, and then we are whatever we colliding with, we are going to that collider, okay. Collider, and we are printing out the name of that game object whatever we collided with, okay. This function get called whenever we collide with something. Control S on your keyboard and head over to unity. You will able to see the ground, okay. The ground will appear because we will collide with this square, and we name it as a ground. And if we collide with this, as we know that that function will get trigger, and the name of that collider will appear in the console, okay. If we hit play, we will able to see the name of the this ground, okay, because we assigned the name of this ground as a ground. So just wait for, as you can see ground, whenever we collide with this square ground, okay, we are printing out the name. So what we gonna do, and we also what we gonna do, we gonna do we're gonna keep track of if we are grounded or not. So we need to make a bool variable which will be true or false. If we collide with this, okay, if we landing on this square or ground, okay, we're gonna set that bool to true. And whenever we leave, okay, whenever we leave, we're gonna set that bool to false. Okay, so what we gonna do, we're gonna make it public. Okay, public bool. Okay, public bool. We will call this is ground. Okay, is ground, is ground. So what we gonna do, so firstly we're gonna check. Okay, we're gonna check if other, okay, other dot collider dot tag. Okay, if it's equals to ground. Basically what we are doing, firstly this function get trigger whenever we collided with something. Okay, and if the collider has tag, as we know, we assign it that square, white square, or that ground as a ground tag. Okay, so if we collide that thing, okay, that game object, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna set is ground to true. Okay, we're gonna set is ground to true. Okay, we're gonna set is ground to true. So we're gonna set is ground to true. So what we're gonna do, and Unity also has a function, it's called on collision exit 2D function. Okay, okay, so we have to type this on collision exit 2D. Okay, this function get called whenever we leave the collider. Okay, whenever we leave the collider, this function get trigger, and we need to check if other, okay, if other dot collider dot tag, if it's equals to ground. Okay, ground, and we have to make these brackets. So basically this function get called whenever we leave the collider. Okay, and if the collider has tag ground, as we know, we assign that game object, square game object, as a ground tag, as we know. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna set is ground to false, is ground to false. Okay, is ground to false. Basically whenever we leaving the collider, we are setting, we are no longer with ground, so that's why we are setting is ground to false. Okay, but when we collide with the ground, okay, when we collide with the ground, so we are setting is ground to true. Okay, is ground to true. And control S on your keyboard and head back to Unity. You will able to see a parameter of bool will appear whenever we collide with this square. As we know, we assigned this square as a ground tag, so the is ground will be true whenever we collide. Whenever we leave this, is ground will be false. If I select the player, as you can see, is ground by default set it to false. Okay, unticked or false. Okay, so if we play, whenever we collide with this, that function get trigger, on collision inter function get trigger, and is ground becomes true. Okay, and whenever we leave this, is ground became false. So as you can see, when we collide this, as we can see, we are colliding with this ground. Okay, so as you can see, is ground becomes true, and whenever we leave, as you can see, is ground becomes unticked, means it's became false. So what we gonna do, we're gonna check. Okay, we're gonna check over here. As you can see, if we are pressing the space key, okay, if we are pressing the space key, and we're gonna check, and is ground is true. Okay, is ground is true. Basically we are checking if we are pressing the space key, okay, space key, and if we are is grounded, then we are calling the jump function. If one of these function, sorry, one of this parameter, if it's false, let's suppose this is ground is false. Okay, it's false, so this function won't get called. Both of these conditions should be true. If we are pressing the space key and then we are grounded, means we are colliding with the ground, then we are calling the jump function. And whenever we pressing the space key, we are no longer contacting with ground, means we is ground is false, this function won't get called, because both of these conditions should be true. And control S on your keyboard and head over to Unity. As we know, whenever we leave the collider, we setting is ground to false. Okay, and if we press the space key and is ground is false, false, that function won't get called. Mean we will not jump whenever we leave the collider. Okay, whenever we collide with this square or this ground, okay, is ground, so we will able to jump. Okay, we will able to jump. So wait for to compile. As you can see, by default is ground is fall. Okay, so so if I clear, as you can see, we cannot jump anymore. One time we only can jump whenever we grounded. Okay, so basically over here, as you can see, whenever we collide with, okay, on collision inter 2D, whenever we collide with something, this function get trigger, and the collider has tag, or the game object has tag ground. As we know, we assigned it that game object as a ground tag, and then we are setting is ground to true. But over here, as you can see, this function on collision exit 2D function get called whenever we leave the collider. Okay, and the collider of and the game object collider has tag ground, we are setting is ground to false. Whenever we leave the collider, we are setting is ground to false. So this one became false, but this both condition should be true, then it will call the jump function. But as we know, this is ground became false whenever we leave the collider, so that's why this jump function is not calling. Basically it's not adding force to the y-axis, so this jump function not calling. Okay, so both of these conditions should be true. Okay, both of these conditions should be true, then this jump function will call. If any of them is false, then jump function won't get call. Okay, so it will not add force to the y-axis. So that's what's happening. Where whenever we leave the collider, okay, whenever we leave the collider, this function get trigger. Okay, this function get trigger, and we are setting is ground to false. So over here, as you can see, you can set it to something like true. Okay, true, or this also mean true. Is ground became false. Okay, is ground became false, so this function won't get called, because both of these conditions should be true in the if condition. Okay, if condition, so then it jump function will call. As we know, whenever we collide with the ground, we are setting is ground to true. So if we pressing the space key, and if it's is ground is true, then we are calling the jump function. So if it's is ground is true, and if we are pressing the space key, means both of these condition are true, then so that's why this jump function getting called. Okay, I hope you get the idea. It's clear to now. Okay, so if you are new to my channel, then subscribe it for future tutorials. Okay, if you want to support me, you can support me on patreon.com. Okay, and lastly, if you enjoyed this video, like this video and share it with your friends who just want to learn unity. Okay, and if and lastly, thanks for watching this video. Okay, goodbye.